All right, hi everybody. Like Katana said, my name is Marie Williams. I am an applications expert here at Imaginate Technologies. I specialize in Revit, mostly doing training and implementation. I am a very heavy Revit user, obviously. Um, and today we're just going to go over the newest updates in the Revit 2021.1 release. So just jumping right in. Some of the new features and enhancements in the Revit 2021.1 release. Sorry guys, that's kind of hard to say. They kind of span across multiple disciplines. So we have, just the basic platform updates. Then we also have some updates that are more relevant to architecture, structure, or MEP. So some of the platform updates. Some of the biggest updates that have been made in 2021.1 are actually to Dynamo. So for those of you who use Dynamo, you know it's a very diverse tool. You can use it for a lot of different things. There have been a few different enhancements made in the 2021.1 release. First one that's really important is the default input ports display. So previously, these would look the same whether or not the port required data input. Now the Dynamo nodes that provide default values will automatically have a default output shown. The Dynamo nodes that do not contain default values will output the function output. And you can kind of see that example in this image here that says plane by origin normal. That's a great example of what the default value input would look like. Another great update is a code block line numbers. These will allow these will automatically populate inside of each code block as you're authoring design scripts. So this is great because it makes it really easy for you to kind of like watch along as you're working. And if you're working like with someone else, you can kind of watch together and see what's happening. If you prefer the old behavior though, you can switch this off. There are settings where you can turn this off so the code block line numbers do not show. Next, the renamed tag has been added. A renamed tag has been added into some of the nodes. If you guys are like me, I like to rename as many of my nodes as I can just to make them very clear to me what they're used for. This is great because now there's a little renamed tag. You can see it there. It's a little yellow tag that says renamed on it. So you can tell which have been renamed and which haven't. And then finally, we have the new documentation browser extension. So this lives inside the sidebar panel, and it will eventually become the home for all Dynamo documentation. So right now, one of the things that they've just gone ahead and built into it is they've taken all like 30 of the most common error messages that you might get via Dynamo, and they've included some in-depth help and some actions that you might be able to take to resolve these errors. So you can see here, there's an example that I know I've gotten many times. Value cannot be null. That's obviously one of the most popular errors that a lot of people get. And you can see here, there's a lot of information on what you might need to do to fix that. And above all, there are a bunch of significant performance improvements. Dynamo is always evolving and trying to make it easier for you guys to use. And all of these capabilities are now installed with Revit 2021.1. Also, there have been a lot of new nodes added. There's actually pretty close to 90 new nodes that have been added, and they cross over about 19 different categories. So Revit element nodes that can be very useful to people who are working with elements. There's also a very wide range of documentation related categories that have been approached. So a lot of the new categories are space, warning, family, and documentation. And there's also some new selection nodes. So as you guys know, more nodes means more functionality within Dynamo. So I was very excited about this particular update. So new Dynamo for Revit path of travel nodes. So the path of travel function was, I think it was added in 2020. It's a great function. We've all probably used it. Well, I know I've used it many times. A lot of you probably have used it as well. So there are new nodes that are added that can be used with the path of travel tool in Revit. Some of the examples of what this might be used for is for calculating, one of the things it does is calculates the longest path of travel and the shortest path from specific rooms that you can specify to different exit points. So you can see which the longest path is going to be. You can also automatically insert, remove, and set waypoints from a path of travel based on a specified index. This is really going to make your distance calculations and route analysis a little bit more efficient. So the idea here is really just to optimize your egress calculations. Okay. Again, on a platform level, some of the updates, sorry guys, I'm hoping my dog is going to stay good, but he's giving me that look. Another big change that's been made to the platform is 47 new units have been added into just the overall platform. Now, a lot of these units are very heavily towards MEP, I will say. There's a lot of airflow, a lot of like fluid dynamic kind of stuff. But these are intended to support architectural and engineering workflows. So it's just giving you even more diversity in what you can do with Revit, either with analysis or in your tag settings or whatever it may be. 47 units is quite a lot, and it spans across 24 parameter categories. This is going to give a lot more flexibility in your to support integrated workflows. It's so small, but this is, I think, one of my favorite updates in 2021.1, a resizable shared parameter dialog box. This is just such a small thing, but being able to resize that shared parameter box is going to make my life a lot easier, especially when I'm, adding in like tooltips or whatever. It just makes it a little bit easier to see everything. I personally am just very excited about this. It's a very small UI change, but I'm happy about it. Another big change is improved Rhino and SAT file import. So if any of you guys have any models that you get that are from Rhino or from maybe Inventor, there is now an optimized way of importing these. So it's going to import with a little bit higher fidelity. So that means that the geometry is going to more closely match what the source info had in it versus previously, sometimes you'll bring in geometry and it just doesn't quite look like it did in the Inventor or the Rhino file. Now you're going to get a little bit more complex parts and assemblies that you can now bring in. This is a great use for design data from other authoring tools. So it's just a little change to the import settings. This is another great one, built-in STL exports. So for those of you who are doing anything along the lines of 3D printing, this is going to be great for you. So there are several additional settings. So you can set it to be binary or ASCII format. You can also set it to be coarse, medium, or high level. I probably would say don't export out like a giant building to an STL file with the intent of 3D printing it. At level high, because that just might have a little bit too much information in it. You can review these files either in the Autodesk viewer, or you can continue to edit them prior to doing any sort of 3D printing in the Autodesk Mesh Mixer. All right, this is a great update to the cloud model, the Revit cloud models. Now you can quickly and easily upgrade Revit cloud models to newer versions. So instead of having to go into your BIM 360 account, download the Revit models, upgrade them, potentially create a whole new BIM 360 project and upload them in the newest version, you can actually do that all through Revit. You have to be a project admin in BIM 360 for this to work, which is good. You don't want just anybody being able to upgrade cloud models. This is a great new feature. It's going to really significantly increase the efficiency and the ease of upgrading a model to a new version. Upgraded models are going to appear in Revit Home just like everything else. In order to do this, you're just going to go to Revit Cloud, Upgrade tab in the BIM 360 Document Management Hub. So the bottom line here is the feature is just really going to simplify the upgrade process. This is a really cool new feature as well, shared 3D views in Revit. So all of us have probably worked with someone who isn't either part of your BIM 360 hub or who just isn't a Revit user or who maybe shouldn't get a hold of a whole Revit model. This new function is called shared 3D views or just shared views, but you can only share 3D views. So basically what you can do here is you can share a 3D view via a web browser with some other stakeholder in the project. They don't need to have access to Revit. They will not be able to edit your model in any way. It's simply just, basically you can have like a sharing view of some sort and you just, send them the link for it. The link is good for 30 days. You do have the option to extend that length if you need to. 30 days for reviewing a 3D view should probably be plenty of time, I think. You might be updating it regularly. And what's great about this feature is, so when you share the view, whoever you send the view to can review, view, markup, measure, comment, all right there in the 3D view. And then you can actually refresh that view in Revit, and you can see those comments and markups, and you can respond directly to them right through Revit. You don't have to go look at that 3D view in the web browser. It's all just native to you in Revit. This is a really great collaboration tool. It's going to be, I can see it being used for a million different things. This is just a really cool little function. Very easy to do, very diverse. You don't have to have like a Autodesk account or anything if you're not the one sharing the view, obviously. Okay, I haven't actually used this tool yet, but in 2021, the original release, there was an option to start user profile and like a customized user profile inside of Revit. So instead of just basically picking if you're going to do architecture, structure, MEP, you can actually customize your workspace to your specific role, your specific needs. So each discipline is kind of collected under, well, each job is kind of collected under each discipline. So you see you've got architecture, structure, MEP, civil, construction, etc. And then underneath each of those, you have different options for like your job underneath each of those disciplines. So based on your job role, these are going to give you groups of tools and functions that are most likely to need to be used by you. Of course, you can always go back and you can customize it even further on your own, but just as a starting point, if you want to have an interface that's dedicated specifically to an architect or an interior designer, you can set that up in your user profile settings. Okay, reset shared coordinates. So this is great for those of you who use shared coordinates. This is going to be really handy. You can now eliminate shared coordinate relationships with all linked files. So erase the GIS coordinate system, set links in the properties palette to not be shared, and avoid unexpected change to the links. So reset the survey point back to internal origin, or set shared coordinates to 0, 0, 0, and set the angle between true north and project north to 0. So I don't know about you guys, but if I've been working on a project with a bunch of different buildings in it, sometimes I can things can get a little out of hand, and it's kind of nice to be able to just like wipe the slate clean and go back and fix everything or put it back the way it needs to be. Or I'll go into one of the models and the shared coordinates will have been messed up, or it's doing something that I don't want. So just being able to reset it back to what you want it to be, it's kind of a nice new feature. So this new Revit feature enables users to set up shared coordinates again by one click of the reset shared coordinate button. Okay. For those of you who have ever tried to acquire shared coordinates, it's kind of like, did it work? I don't know. Like, I hope it did. Like, unless you see something move, it's kind of really not clear if you've successfully acquired shared coordinates or not. So if you have duplicate models in a project, when you acquire shared coordinates, a warning will appear stating that the selected link is placed more than once in the host model, and to remove duplicated instances of the link. When acquiring coordinates, if there's more than one shared site in the model or in the host model, a warning will appear. Sorry, guys. A warning will appear to remove extra shared sites from the linked model. So if the user tries to add shared coordinates from a model while already using the coordinate system, a warning will appear saying the selected link has the same coordinates with the host model, and to reset the shared coordinates. So we're going back to the being able to reset shared coordinates. And then you can then, when acquired shared coordinates fail, the dialog will appear and let you know what happened, like why is this not working, and there'll be links to potential help topics. This is providing users with a very helpful notification system to just let you know whether or not the shared coordinate acquisition was successful. Okay, view switching improvements. This is also a really cool UI function. I personally like to keep, or I like to work in a lot of views at once. I try not to keep too many tabs open, but as you're working, a lot of times you need more than one view to be able to get a certain task done. So previously, when working between views, the view method would be defined by tab position. The new method of view switching is going to be defined by view history order. You can choose which method of view switching you use by going to the Revit options and then user interface. You can set the view tab switching to be either by the original method or by the current or the new history method. Users can use Control Shift and Control Shift Tab shortcut to cycle through forward and backwards all open views in view history order in Revit. Okay, so the new functions for architecture. Generative design is a design exploration process to quickly generate and evaluate high-performing design alternatives. In 2021, there are 3 new generative design sample studies. The first of these is going to be grid object placement study. This places elements in a rectangular grid pattern inside of a room. In this study, you can configure a few different variables and their ranges, such as distances between objects, X and Y directions, and the minimum distances from objects to walls. You can then specify design goals, such as the minimum or maximum number of elements to be placed. One of the things I actually get asked quite often, especially when I'm training on like the array tool, is can I array this like how you can in AutoCAD? Can I array this in a grid pattern? So this generative design sample study is a kind of an alternative to that. This is a very similar way to kind of create that that grid layout very quickly. The next one is going to be randomized object placement study. This enables you to create a random cluster of elements inside of a selected room. This study could be great for either placing entourage or placing trees in a park or people in a building lobby. You could also use it for tables in a selected room. You know, honestly, it kind of depends on like what your job is or like what kind of projects you work on. It is just basically randomly placing objects inside of a room. Obviously, you can set like the number or anything like that. But that's the next sample study. And then finally, there's the stepped grid object placement study. So this is a variation of the grid object placement study. It can be used to place elements in a stepped or alternating grid pattern within a room. So again, another type of variation of the grid object placement sample study. Could have a bunch of different functions. Again, it depends on like what kind of projects you're doing. The bottom line here is starting to use generative design in Revit is great for quickly evaluating design options and to save time with this automation tool. For those of you who use FormIt, this is really cool. So this is FormIt Converter and Revit enhancements. So FormIt offers intuitive tools to sketch mass forms, including complex curved geometry. You can then assign materials in your sketch at any desired scale or rotation. Prior to Revit 2021.1, FormIt materials applied to these complex forms or containing overrides might not translate quite how you imagine they would into Revit. In this current release, the FormIt Converter for Revit 2021 has been updated to display these materials correctly. This is so useful because if any of you have ever used FormIt, you know that it's kind of frustrating to spend all this time making this beautiful model in FormIt and then you bring it into Revit and it's like, well, damn it, this doesn't look the same way as it did in FormIt. So now you've got to go and you've got to like paint faces or whatever else to get your materials to look the way you want them to. Materials from FormIt are now available in the Revit materials list. So you might, for example, use the paint tool to apply these materials now to element faces. You might also utilize these materials when you're defining your Revit wall assemblies. So you can use those materials that you brought in from FormIt still in Revit, just as you would in FormIt. This enhancement enables you to communicate conceptual ideas from FormIt to Revit with better fidelity of curved geometry and materials, which, as you guys know, it's a lot easier to model that kind of geometry in FormIt than it is in Revit in a lot of cases. All right, this is another great function, SketchUp 2020 file imports. I've already used this like 5 times. If you get a SketchUp model, or if you guys already use SketchUp, previously you weren't able to import SketchUp into Revit, and I will say this works really, really well. I was just recently building a model from a SketchUp model, and I was able to just bring the SketchUp model right in. I could measure, I could trace, I could see the materials, I could do anything I needed to, depending on how you manage your SketchUp models. You know, you've got some functionality where you can turn layers on and off. It's all very, very useful. And there is a lot more ease of doing this now in Revit. All right, some structural functions. So now you can quickly identify the rebar host. So you can simply select the reinforcement and click select host command in the host panel. And this switches the selection from the rebar to its host. So if you've got rebar selected, or if you're, if you can only select rebar for some reason, you can actually, by kind of like through that rebar, you can select the host that it's inside of. This really enhances productivity. I know that whenever I'm working with rebar, it's like, I don't know, I feel like it's kind of hard to see what's going on with rebar sometimes. So it's kind of nice to be able to get the host or the rebar, whichever one you need. And it's nice to be able to quickly identify what the host is. This feature enhances productivity and makes it possible to quickly identify the rebar host. Okay, so some MEP improvements. I get a lot of questions about the P&ID modeler, so this is kind of nice. So after selecting a plant 3D project on a Europe data center, in Revit 2021.1, you can now access the P&D projects hosted via the Plant 3D collaboration service on BIM 360 Europe data center locations. Bottom line here is the new feature makes it easier, makes it possible to connect the P&D modeler and Revit projects on the Europe data center locations. I don't know when this is going to come stateside, but it's still a good step in the right direction. All right, improved panel schedule view and system browser interaction. This is also a really great function. I love the systems browser, especially when I'm looking at a model view and, when you're trying to find something, or like, and you're using the systems browser and you select it and you can see where it is in the model. I find that so very useful. So now that same functionality has been transferred into panel schedules. So you can use the systems browser to select something in a panel schedule, and it'll highlight that element in the panel schedule. This change is obviously not limited to only electrical elements, but that's just a really great example. Bottom line here is when you select an element in the system browser, while displaying a panel schedule or schedule view in the properties palette, this will display in the properties in the selected element. So you can quickly use the systems browser to find elements in the model, find elements in a panel schedule, and view and edit the properties as needed. All right, guys, so I know that was quick. This is a 2021.1 update. It's not like a full version update. I just want to make note that right now, ImagineIt is doing a 30% discount on Autodesk training classes. This is for a limited time. So when you enroll in a live online class through October 31st, you need to be able to complete the class by November 30th, but there are over 70 courses to choose from, including AutoCAD, Inventor, Civil 3D, Revit, just about anything. You can find those classes on our website. And there's the promo code to use to get 30% off on those classes.